This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Tzadi. All the learning has been generously sponsored as a schos refuah shlema v'chad v'leya b'asar adina. Mirz Hashem, the learning of the entire Chabura as we go into Matan Torah. Mirz Hashem should bring chad v'leya b'asar adina, an incredible and complete refuah shlema, as well as learning shmiyas choshedich b'tam zibas v'rachel shem levizavo yifik v'nteli shem v'chaya v'lem Yehudes Abbas asima malka, as well as refuah Hashem shel yus and v'rei shmom v'tilan nan v'zil mechlester nechama b'as riva asar blum b'as mindachay moshe and Malka, which Sheikhana, Besoich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding in the top line of Daf Sadi Omid Aleph, and actually the last first five words of today's shir should have belonged to yesterday's shir. This is the end of Rav Chisda's brisa that Rav Chisda is trying to prove us that Bezdin has the koyach to uproot Dinei De'araisa. That is what Rav Chisda is trying to prove us. And the Brisa concludes that she, this girl who's a katana, could eat truma. And the problem is, how could this girl eat truma if she's only a katana? And this is the raya that we're going to see. It says the Gemara that koyach without bezdin to uproot it in the raisa. Answers the Gemara, no, it's not a raya. Why not? Because b'truma derabanan, we're discussing truma derabanan, and therefore it's not a raya because it's a din derabanan. So we're looking for a raya that bezdin has the power to uproot the raisas. And really, the much of today's shir is going to be many different rayas and sources and cases proving this point. So let's begin. Says the Gemara in the top line, Tashim. What is the din if one, as Rashi points out, by accident eats truma tameya? Mishalim chulin ta'irim. He pays back chulin, which is tar. Shilim chulin tameim. What happens if he did? He wasn't supposed to, but he paid chulin tameim. If he did it by mistake, then it's okay. It works. But b'mezid ain't tashlumim to tashlumim. Why not? As Rashi in the first last wide line points out, the reason being, Tekansinalei, we can ask him, what are you doing? You're supposed to pay back with chulin ta'irin, and you didn't. You're supposed to pay back with something which is pure, and you paid with impure. So ain't tashlumim tashlumim, and you have to go and repay. V'chachamim oimrim, that was the din of sumchas. Chachamim argue, and they say achazeh v'achazeh tashlumim tashlumim. In both cases, it is a good tashlumim, whether it was b'mezid, whether it was b'shakik. V'chazar u'mishalin chulin ta'irim. It works. The payment is a valid payment, but then you have to go and pay again chulin ta'irim. V'avinam ba. And says the Gemara, we pondered on this brisa trying to figure out b'mezid in tashlumim. If you did it b'mezid, it's not a good tashlumim. Tavai Allah bracha. Why not ask the Gemara, as Rashi, again, we're going to take a lot of Rashis today, as Rashi points out in the first narrow line, why are we constantly him? What mezid, my mezid yishkan? Avu bisha yadea shein tameim. Niskavin agunim. He's trying to pay back. So what did he do wrong? Because what did he eat? Let's go back on the second line of the Gemara, and he ate truma tameo. We didn't explain properly. And he paid back with chulin, which is tameh. So he ate truma, which is tameh, which is forbidden for a kohen to eat. So he ate something which is like a chazi. No one's allowed to eat it. Leibim ate tamasa. He's not even allowed to eat it when the kohen is tameh. And what did he pay back with? And he paid back with chulin tameim, which he is able to eat b'mei tamasai. So says the Gemara, how could you bring, what's the problem with what he did? Why are you telling me we can ask him? He did something wrong. What did he do wrong? Tavala bracha. It should be amazing what he did. Explains the Gemara of Amar Rav of Amrila Kedih Chasir Machzav Achi Getani. We have some missing words from the Brisa. Achal Truma Tamei Mishalim Kol Duhu. He ate Truma Tamei Mishalim Kol Duhu. He has to pay it back with a little bit. With anything. Rashi points out, if the truma that you ate was tamei, which was forbidden, then you pay back in with chulin tamein. But achal truma tehayra, that's the case. You went and you ate truma tehayra. What's the din? Mishalim chulin tahirim. Then you have to pay back with chulin, which is tar. And now what happens if shile and chulin tameim? Let's say you went and you pay back with chulin tameim. Now the case makes a lot of sense. You ate truma, which is tar. the best item in the world for a kohen, and you paid back with chulin, which is tamei. So Chazam Rishon Rameir b'shoigig, it's going to work tashlum. B'meizin, no, we can ask you tashlum. Chachamim ha'imrim b'shoigig b'meizin tashlum. Regardless of works, chazim mishalach chulin tarim, then you have to pay back. So now that was a whole lengthy brayse, and now we got to the point that we're driving to. Articulates the Gemara about 12 lines in the wide lines. The first word line is Vaha. Vaha, in this case, Hacha Dimidaraisa Tashlumim Alya. On the Daraisa level, you paid back, Kave. Dimekajbo in Kayin Isha, Tavsilu Kedushi. How do I know? Because if the Kayin took this item that you paid back with, the Chulin Tameyin, and was Mekadish and Isha would work. It's considered the Kayins. And Va'amar Rabbanon in Tashlumim. And the Rabbanan say it's not a good payment because Sharmina and Isha Ishla Alma, and they're going to make it that the Kedushin is not a good Kedushin, and they're making a woman mutter to the world. So asks the Gemara, or suggests the Gemara Raya, the Chazal have the power to uproot. Says the Gemara, no, Raya, Mayin Tashlumim, the Kamar Rameir. What did Rameir mean when he said it's not a good payment? The Bailam had Tashlumei Chulin Tahirin. They have to go back and pay Chulin Tahirin. So Rameir didn't really mean it doesn't work. You're right, it works, and it's the Kayins, and he can marry a woman with it. When Rameir said it doesn't work, what he meant was, you have to go and repay chulin tahirin. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Now there's no more machlekes. What do the Chachamim say? Look back. What do the Chachamim say? You just look up 6 lines. Pain b'shogig, pain b'mezid. It's a good payment. V'chayzeru mishali chulin tahirim. So ask the Gemara, it comes out based on this answer that Suchas and the Rabbanan are saying the same thing. Explains the Gemara, no, you're right that in certain scenarios it's going to end up being the same thing, but the machlokes in the Chachamim and Rameir is, what is the status with a mezid? The Chachamim said both shogig and mezid you have to repay, whereas Rameir said if you did it b'shogig it's going to work, but if you did it b'mezid it's not going to work. As Rashi says, like we just said, the Rameir, b'shogig tashlumim, and you don't have to pay anymore. And the Rabbanan come along and say both b'shogig and b'mezid you have to repay. So the Gemara tried to bring a raya, and that was deflected. It says the Gemara 3 lines from the white lines. Let's try again. Tashima, dam shenitma v'zarkoi. You have dam which is tummy, which of course once the dam is tummy, you're not supposed to be sprinkling it on the mizbeach, but you did. The kohen did. V'zarkoi says this brayso, and this is a brayso which I believe, yes, we learned it in Gemara Mesachim. B'shoigeg hortza. If the kohen made a mistake, hortza gives the bailam a kapara, it works. B'mezid loy hortza. Articulates the Gemara v'achadim deraisa tuyim artza. On a deraisa level, it works. How do I know? The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso. Alma hatzitz merata. For what is the tzitz, the head plate of the kohen gadol? Merata give a kapara al adam v'ala basar v'ala chilev on the blood, meats and fats shenitma, which are tamei bein b'shogig bein b'mezid bein b'oinis bein merata bein b'yachad bein b'tzibur. In any form that these items were tamei, the tzitz is merata. So on a deraisa level, you have tamei dam and you sprinkled it, it works. Biblically, it works because the kohen gadol has the tzitz that allows it to work. V'ami Rabbanan, and Kamlan the Rabbanan, they say, Loi hortza. Kamlan the Rabbanan say it doesn't work. Ask the Gemara, how could that be? How could Chazal come along and uproot a din deraisa? And you're letting them bring chulin azara? Again, a raya to show, like we're saying the whole day over here, that we have rayos that the din derabanan can even go and uproot the din deraisa. So we see clearly that Chachamim could uproot a din deraisa. Says the Gemara, no raya, Amar Rav Yossi Chanina, 3 lines to the bottom. What it mean? It doesn't work. The Amar lahater basar ba'achila just meant that you can't eat it. But it's true the bailim get the kapara. Ask the Gemara, what? They're uprooting, meaning you just answered me. No, they're not uprooting it in. Because they get the kapara, but you can't eat it. Says the Gemara, so you're uprooting the fact that they can't eat it. Uksev in the pasuk says, you should eat out what you get the kapara for. The achila of the kohanim, the eating of the kohanim is that which allows the bailim get their kapara. Omar Le, the Gemara answers a very critical and important teretz. This is an answer which is going to be an underlying thread and theme to the Gemara, Sheiv al taiseh shani. Says the Gemara, if you're passive, that's different. Explains Rashi, the last Rashi in the Amud. Lav akiri. If you're doing something passively, you're just not eating the carbon, that's not called uprooting. Kigoin. Achilas basar asei, eat the meat is a positive commandment. Amar Rabbanan and the Chazal are teaching you, shave, sit, v'al toichal, don't eat it. Lav akiri b'yadayim. You're not uprooting the din daraisa of eating it. Element meiloi me'akra. Loaded Rashi. And it's uprooted on itself. Avul truma, the Kamar leisa loiklo, mumafkel l'chulin akira ma'amishi. So the Gemara says, you're right that you're going to see from this case that we can have a passive din that the Rabbanan could uproot a daraisa, but we don't have a source from here that you could go and proactively, we'll call it, uproot a daraisa. Amar lei, as we turn over to Sadi Amid Beis, so Rav Chisda retorts back to Rabba, Baya lo'isav lo'isayvach. I was asking you other questions. You know what I was asking from? Orel, Hazah, Yizemel, Sadin, Betitis, Vekivsei Atzeres, Shefer Lulav. But Hashtad, meaning Rav Chisda said to Rabbi, I had a whole list of questions I was going to ask you about. But Hashtad is Shanislam, but now that you answered me, Sheva al Taisa loy ma'ak loy, now that you answered me, that Sheva al Taisa loy ma'akeru is not called uprooting. Kuleinami Sheva al Taisa ninu. All of these cases are cases of Sheva al Taisa. They're not cases of positive uprooting, and therefore there's no raya from any of these cases. And of course, on the Daf of Erev Shavuos, how beautiful to have the Kivsei Asares, the carbon for Shavuos. Let's continue with the Gemara that continues bringing rayos. We're 4 lines down at the Sadi Amid Beis that the Gemara is still trying to bring a raya that you're allowed to uproot bikum v'asei. You're allowed to positively uproot a din da'araisa, which we haven't proven yet. Tashema says the Gemara, Elav tishmaon. To him you shall listen. Afilu ayim l'cha var alachas v'gom mitzvah b'tayra. Go Nelio bar Carmel. So what do we see? We see you can even uproot a positive commandment. Answers the Gemara, Kol Shamaloi Shani Akolafisha Shamaloi Shiny Akolafisha Shamaloi. So says the Gemara, we see you can listen to Elio and Nov, you can even uproot it in the Raisa. Says the Gemara, that's not a Raya. Shani also Xavier love Tishmon, Beligmar Minei, Migdar Milsa Shiny. You can learn from there because that's a special case. Migdar Milsa, also another very important rule in all of Chazal and Torah. We're going to scroll down to Rashi about 15 lines to the bottom. Rashi points out what's Migdar Milsa? To make a geder and a takana, to enact a fence around the Torah, that you always could do. However, that doesn't show us that you could possibly uproot a din daraisa. So Tashema, we continue 10 lines down at the 2 dots as the Gemara continues to prove Biloi mevutal divrei Rebbe Rav Shimon Gamliel Amar Eino Yachlo Levatav Lo Hisav Al Tanoi. What's the case over here? So again, Rashi points out that the case over here is if someone sends a get to his wife and then he wants to afterwards go and nullify the messenger. So bitzloi, if the husband went and he was mevatel the get, mevutal, it works. Says the Gemara, that's Rameir Shita. Rashbag says, no, you're not able to mevatel it, and not to add on to any of the conditions. Ask the Gemara, what power does the Bezin have? Get. On the level of the Reis, the get is batal because the Shliach wanted to be mevatel it, because the messenger wanted to be mevatel it. Ask the Gemara, because we're concerned about the power of Bezdin, we're allowing them to say that the get is not batal. If the get is not batal, that means this person is divorced, and then she can go marry anyone else. It's a little bit counterintuitive. We're sending a get. So on the deraisa level, we just said, on the deraisa level, what happens? On the deraisa level, what happens? The get is batal. If the get is batal, the deraisa batal get. And therefore, what happens if on the deraisa get, the get is batal? That means she is not divorced. That means she is not divorced, correct? Because there is no more a get. Midaraisa batal get. And because of the concern of Bezdin, what are we doing? We're saying that the get does work. So if we're saying that the get does work, what are we allowing? We're allowing this woman to go and get married elsewhere. But on the biblical level, what is this woman? A married woman. Because midaraisa, the get wasn't chal, the get did nothing. So on a daraisa level, this woman's a married woman. But because we're concerned that koyach Bezdin yafa, we're worried that Bezdin might not have the proper power. We're allowing this married woman to marry out. Says the Gemara, yes. A fundamental din within Kiddushin, explains the Gemara, that specifically in the world of marriage and gain, and we'll see this again and again in Ksubas and Gain, you're allowed to uproot the din daraisa marriage. Why? When one gets married, he gets married al das the din darabanan, and therefore Rafkin Rabbanan Kiddushin. I got married al das the Rabbanan. If they come along later and say, boom, your marriage is nothing, it's over. Amalei Ravina the Ravashi, so says Ravina the Ravashi, Atena Kaddish Bekasba, loaded words, but says Ravina the Ravashi, I understand if you got married with money. So then we could say, and this is the simplest understanding, that the money of the marriage is null and it's just a matana. It's not a marriage. Chazal could go and say, by the way, when you got married and you gave that woman a ring, it was nothing. You just gave her a present. But ask the Gemara, we know there's 3 ways to get married. Kesef, Shtar, and Bia. But Kaddish, Babia, let's say they got married by sleeping and having relations together. Ma'ikal and Meimar, what's Chazal gonna do? Shaviu, Rabbanan, Lebilas, Lebilas, Nos. Says the Gemara, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna make that which they did, they're going to make it into a bilas nos, meaning the Rabbanan even have the power to do that. Again, different machlekes rishonim exactly how to learn this give and take of the Gemara, but that's the simplest understanding. So Tashema, the Gemara continues about 20 lines down. The first one line is bilas nos, trying to prove that Chazal have the power to uproot dini deraisa. Amar Rav Elazar ben Yaakov shemati shebezdin makim va'oinshin shloim min ha'Torah. Bezdin hit and punish shloim min ha'Torah. V'loy laver al divrei Torah, in order to preserve the Torah. But not necessarily. If someone was over a deraisa, elasli siyag l'Torah. Chazal, Bezdin have the power to hate and give malchus, even if someone didn't do an aveira, to erect a boundary, a safeguard for the Torah. For example, he was riding on a horse and Shabbos to me, Yevanim, day of the Greeks, and they gave him skila. And the Gemara explains, he really wasn't chayiv skila. Why did they give him skila? And because the hour, the situation determined that Chazal had to show the paramount importance of Chilul Shabbos, so they gave skila, they killed someone, even though he wasn't chayiv. We see very clearly, Bezdin has the power to do everything. V'shav Ma'isa, another story, an incredible story. He slept with his wife in public underneath the teina, underneath the tree. So it was his wife. What did he do wrong? Says the Gemara, no. Bezdin Velkur, they gave him malchus. Why? Again, he wasn't really chayiv malchus. The hour determined it. They had a show. You can't just go and be pritos. You can't just go in the middle of the public with such a show of affection. Says the Gemara, no. Migdar, Milsa, Shiny, it's not a raya. Because again, these are just cases of Migdar, Milsa. These are cases of erecting boundaries. These aren't cases of positive uprooting the Dini Torah. So it comes out at the end of the Gemara is that we're seeing that seemingly the only time Bezdin Kaprut a Din Daraisa is Sheval Taisa, being passive, as we saw on the bottom of Amud Aleph, or in the world of Kiddushin, because the whole thing is al das was on this kanayus, this condition. But in a regular case, Bezdin doesn't have such power. We'll conclude today with a few small pieces of Gemara. Says the Gemara about 15 lines to the bottom, the 2 dots. Neither the first or second husband can metamit to her, and how do we know the chsev? And they learned what does this pasuk mean? For his wife, he's allowed to be metame. You shouldn't become tame leichaloi. So from here we darshan yesh baal shemetame, yesh baal she'eino metame. We have 2 different types of husbands. One husband could become tame to his wife, and one husband cannot when she is nifter. Case in metame uleishtek sheir ben metame leishtek psili can only become tame to a woman who is kosher, not his wife who is possible. V'lozev says that kon mitzvah not zeicha in her findings. Time amai, what's the reason? Says the Gemara 10 lines to the bottom. Why? We say that when a woman finds something, it goes to her husband because we don't want there to be discord. We don't want there to be resentment and hate. But in this case, there's quite a terrible story over here. She's married to guy number 2, and guy number 1 shows up. Quite a dreadful story. So we say there already is Eva, so we don't have to give anyone the mitzvah. But Maisya dad, neither her husband gets her earnings. Why? The husband gets the rights to his wife's earnings because he supports his wife. But he doesn't support her. He does not get her earnings. And finally, he cannot be made for her nedarim. What's the reason? I'm rachmana. Baal mefer. Why? So they don't become disgusted. Again, they're quite disgusted with each other, and therefore he's not allowed to be made for nedarim. And finally, the next case in the Mishnah is if she was a Bas Yisrael, she becomes puzzled to the kahuna. As we turn over to tomorrow's daf of Sadi Aleph and Aleph, let's just learn 2 lines. Says Gemara Pshita, that's obvious. Bas Levi min ha-meiser tzrichle. The chiddush of the Mishnah is that it's a Bas Levi, she's not allowed to go back and eat meiser. Bas Levi min ha-meiser mi mifsla b'znos. Says Mara, why? Abbas Levi, if she's mizana, it doesn't become possible to eat meiser. But Tanya, Levia shenishbis shenivla bilas nos noisla meiser v'achel. She's looking to eat meiser. Amar Rav Sheshes, you're right. A normal Levi could eat meiser, but Kansa in this case, we give her a special kenas. That's why she can't eat meiser. We'll pick it up in the Bas Kayin in the next year. B'siyata dishmayo.